Domestic workers are at risk of enslavement because they do not always enjoy legal protections that are common in conventional workplaces, can suffer social isolation, and may lack personal autonomy within the home where they work. Domestic work is generally poorly regulated and undervalued. Domestic workers often do not have an employment contract and may be excluded from labor laws. Even in places where they are protected by the law, enforcement is often weak. Some domestic workers live in their employers' homes. If they are considered on call 24 hours per day, they are more vulnerable to being enslaved, which might mean being coerced into working without rest and prevented from leaving the house. They may have their pay withheld, be abused, treated as a commodity and controlled by their employer. This would be a situation of domestic servitude or modern slavery. There are many signs of domestic slavery. The more common ones are not being able to take time off and having freedom of movement restricted. There may be physical and emotional abuse and mistreatment. Workers who migrate to take up employment are at especially high risk. Migrant domestic workers often have their documents confiscated. They may be told that if they leave, they will be imprisoned for breaking immigration rules. If they attempt to escape, they may face a language barrier in seeking help. In some cases, those who escape and ask for help are escorted back to their employer or detained because their immigration status depends upon living with their employer. Children are also at high risk of domestic slavery. The most recent global estimates report there are 17.2 million child domestic workers in the world. Of these, 11.5 are either below the minimum working age or are working in hazardous circumstances. Domestic workers have historically had poor legal protection, but in 2012, a convention, or legally binding international treaty, was adopted by the International Labour Organization to address this issue. This standard, known as ILO Convention 189, aims to ensure that domestic workers are protected from exploitation. It requires governments to ensure that domestic workers have clear terms and conditions of employment, daily and weekly rest time, and restrictions on payment in goods or services instead of cash. So far, in its first 5 years, only 23 out of the ILO's 187 member countries have ratified it or agreed to incorporate its recommendations in their own labor laws within a year. Now you know the facts about domestic slavery. Watch our other videos to learn more about modern slavery.